Hi everyone. I had a question this week about using the envelope punch board with how to make tabbed dividers. I know that there's a lot of videos out there that show how to do, like, there's one I just watched this past week where it was a 3x5 card and you punch the little tab out and it makes like a little tab on the top of the card that then you can use for an insert. And we've seen the file folders. We can do that. But what I like to do, and this is a book that I made for my mom, that I did actual dividers in. Now I know We Are Memory Keepers has out a tab punch now that's got all kinds of fancy things on it and makes tabs. They don't quite look like this, but that is available if you don't want to go through what I'm going to show you here to do that. And then of course there's the ones where you just glue onto the book, and I've done those with this as well too for that. But it's just basically the tabs where you can put, you know, just like the tab dividers, and then the back of it is just another sheet of paper. Now I did these double because I want them to last for her forever, and I did this I guess it was about 5 years ago that I did these for her, and so I want them to last for a really long time for her, and so that's what I want to show you today, on how to do these and how to figure out how to get them to go in order. So, getting started, I don't want to take up too much time talking. So how I figure it out, first off, is I pick how big I want my tab to be. So when I first started out figuring out the little book that I'm going to show you, which is 3.5, the cardstock that I'm using, whoops, is 3.5 by 5.25. So I hope that, I'll turn that around. So 3.5 by 5.25. And how I figured out to start at 1 3/4 of an inch is I went in and said, okay, I'm going to start at 1.5. Now when I say when I'm going to start at 1.5, I mean here on the board, 1 inch is here, and then 1/4, 1/2, 3/4, and 2. So if you have the envelope punch board already, you already know that. And down here, like if you're making envelopes, it tells you the paper size and the card and where to start. So these are your start marks, and that's what I'm talking about is these start marks right here. So I started at 1.5 and I punched it, and then I took it to my card stock and spaced it out. Well, it wasn't spacing correctly, so then I go up to another 1/4 of an inch, so 1 3/4. So that's how I determined 1 3/4 starting line. So let me show you how I did that on the other side of this piece of paper. So you do 1 3/4, and then you punch. Okay, and then you flip it over and you take right here in the middle, and I just eyeball this. It's not perfect, it's not science, it's not completely accurate. I lined that up with the 1 3/4, the same mark, and I punch. Now this isn't going to punch out because it's thin copy paper, so I'll just cut this real quick. Okay, so that is the tab right there, and then I take it, now this is just preliminary, remember, so then I take this piece of paper, which is the same size as my cardstock, line it up on here, and I mark right in the middle with a pencil. And then I take that same punch. Now the reason why I turned it over is because I'm using this as my guide. This here that this machine cuts out, this is my guide, right? So I again, right in the middle, and I mark right there, right in the middle of the tab. and then I move it over, and I mark again right in the middle of the tab, and I keep going. Middle of the tab, middle of the tab, right there. Okay, so now I know that that's going to be the middle of the tab right there, and see this goes to the end of the paper, so that's perfect. That'll give me 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 tabs. So here's how we do it. We take and we're going to start, and we always start the first tab at 1 3/4 of an inch. Punch, flip it over. I'm eyeing right in the middle, right here, 3/4 of an inch. See right there in the middle, just eyeing it, and then I'm punching. Okay, so that makes my tab. Okay, my next one, I move this down so I can see there, and I mark right here, middle of the tab. Now that line is going to be lined up on the 1 3/4 inch mark, that mark that I just made. Punch. I flip it over. I line up the middle of this with the 1 3/4 inch, and I punch. Okay. Now we've got tab number 2. Okay. Now I take this one. Now here's where, okay, so then you have tab number 1. Whoops, sorry, I'm getting off camera. Sorry. Tab number 1. We have tab number 2 right here. Okay. So tab number 1 is done for right now. Set it over to the side. So tab number 2 is the one that you're going to use to make your center mark. Sorry, I'm having a hard time seeing this. Okay, so that's your guide. Lay tab number 2 off to the side. Line up your mark that you just made with 1 3/4. And punch. Flip it over. Middle of the punch with the 1 3/4. And punch. Okay, so that's tab number 3. Take tab number 3, put it on your paper, your next paper, make a mark. Okay, set it off to the side. So this one goes to the mark you just made is 1 3/4. And you punch, and you flip it over, and you're right there. And you punch. Okay. Okay, so then we have 4 tabs on there with it. Now, it's not always going to be a perfect science. There's not always going to be a perfect way to do it. It depends on your paper. This one I worked out, the book that I did for Mom, I worked out completely with the paper, and then I made the notebook according to the paper with it. So you may end up with 4 like this and not have room for your 5th one, and that's okay. That's not a big deal at all, but we can definitely try it and see how it goes. Because if I'm making the mark, okay, there. So then we line up on 1 3/4. And I can see right here, let's see how this goes in, and it's halfway, kind of like halfway on my punch there. then I know that it's probably going to line up and I'm going to get 5 tabs out of this. So you punch, and you have a little tab there. Flip it over. Now the center of your paper, this one's a little harder to see because, but see, as you can see, the center of your paper should be the line of your next card. See right there? So all I'm going to do is line this up on 1 3/4. And if it's easier for you to punch this one where you're lining up the 1 3/4, that's fine too. It doesn't, like I said, it's not a perfect science. So there's your 5th tab. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay, so now what you want to do, that you've got your tabs here, is just like they do on the file folders, is go in and cut off your little excess paper. Yep. So let me turn this around. It'll probably be easier to see. I've got my camera in the way there a little bit, but it'll be okay. I always look and see what side my blade is on of the wire. So it's on the inside to where I am. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to line this up. And what you don't want to do is cut off your tab. So always be mindful of where your tab is, because you don't want to cut your tab off. You put your thing. Now this one, because I don't have a tab down here, I'm going to start at the bottom down here. I'm going to move that line up about there. I'm going to cut this off until I feel it release. You'll feel a little release in the little curve before you hit the next one. So, and then you have right there the little tab. Now you can cut that a little closer if you want. You can put it back on and cut again if you want, but I don't mind that. That's okay with me. Still looks like a tab. I'm not too worried about it. But like I said, you can, you know, put it back on here and get it a little closer if you want, and cut a little bit more off. Now, my cutter doesn't do that. If I don't get it right the first time, it's not going to do it. But I think that looks good, so the way it is. So there's your number 1. So now on the next ones, what you do, you can start at the bottom again, line it up, go through slowly until you feel that release, right? So then you're going to come down the other way. So from the other side, because you have a little bit to cut off the other side, feel that release. And there you go. There's number 2. Okay. And so on and so forth. Okay. Cut down. Release. Cut up. Release. Okay. There we go. There is number 3. Now I go in with my like my cutter bee scissors, my little sharp scissors, and cut those off. You can also do it with a ruler and an X-Acto knife. That's, you know, whatever you're used to using. Cut this off. That's fine. And release. And then, oops. Bring it down. And release. Okay, so there's 4. And then, now with this one, what I normally do is, this is number 5, so you can cut it like this way If you want like coming down on it, that's fine. Or you can go up, whatever's easier for you. With it, I just line up my little wire. If you're not familiar with the Fiskars cutter, it has a little wire. I think most of them do. And then that's what I'm lining it up with. You just go up, feel that release, and there it is. So there's number 5. Okay. Oh, it could be number 1, too, because they're reversible, of course. Okay, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So now we've got cute little tabs at the top that can go in a book. Okay. So now, and this paper was cut. I always cut my paper, that's the other thing I wanted to say, was that I always cut my paper a 1/2 inch wider. So to do the tab on it, so the tab, the part that sticks out, this would be 3 by 5.5, 5.5 this way, 3.5 this way with the tab. So then as I cut this off, then of course your paper would be cut at 3 and it would fit inside your dividers. Any dividers that are like this, you have a couple options. One is you could take a decorative piece of paper if you wanted to do it in a, say you want to do a junk journal and you want to put them in a junk journal. You have a couple options. One is you would get a folded piece of whatever you want to use for your paper. So say you wanted to use like a decorative sheet of the decorative digital, this is a digital paper, scrapbook paper, any kind of the decorative papers is what I'm trying to say. Sorry. And then you would fold it in half. So you would double, so like on this measurement, it would be 3.5, so it'd be 7 inches wide by 5.25. So, and then you would fold it in half to get your, 3.5 measurement. And then, of course, on the one side of the flap, say these were connected together, you would punch here. And then on the second side, you would punch here. It's just, and then they would fold together and you could sew it into your book. You could put papers in here and whatnot. The other option that you have, which is cut them all like this, and then take your folded piece of paper, so that say this is a decorative piece of paper, you fold it in half, right? I would use one that is not maybe blank on the inside, like it's not printed on the inside, it's just a single-sided scrapbook paper or digital papers usually if you don't print on the back side, that way. And take this and glue it to your decorative paper so that your tab stands out, and then you can sew it into your junk journal from there. There is a book that I did 5 years ago. It's the Vampire Journal on my YouTube page that I did the sewn in. I did a Coptic stitch journal and I sewed the folders. I did the tabs on the folders and sewed them into the book they were folded pieces of paper. So I did it that way. So either way works. And hopefully that makes sense. I hope that was enough visual that it made sense for it. This one here you could also bind in the binder rings. You could put binder rings on here, punch your holes, put binder rings. You could use Zutter. I have a Zutter machine, and these work really well in the Zutter machine to do your journals. So there's a lot of options you could have with them. You could even do them like in a card. I mean, this is 3 by 5 kind of, and so it would even go in a card, division. You could divide out whatever you wanted, your images that you stamp out or whatnot. So the other option that you have too is, as you can see, you can spread out your tabs. So once you have one of these punched, then you can go through and you can say, oh, okay, well, if I punch it always at 1 3/4, I'm always going to have this size tab. Now, if you increase it to, like, your first starting line is going to be 2 inches on your envelope punch board, then of course your tab is going to be bigger. If you decrease it, your tab is going to be smaller. I hope that makes sense. I like this size. I think this size is kind of nice. It works for a lot of things. But of course you can make it bigger, smaller, whatever you want to do. It doesn't really matter on that. What does matter is your page size. So if you'd rather have your tabs like this, kind of like it did on the bigger one, you would just spread it out. And as you can see on this one, this tab is bigger than this tab. See that? So this one I just did add a different marking on the envelope punch board. So these I thought worked better smaller because it's a smaller piece of paper. So, and if you want to increase your, like use the same size tabs and increase your page size, this is how you would do it. You would just put along here and then you would measure the whole thing. And then of course your marks that you're making on your page, instead of going here, you would go right at the edge of your, this right here is kind of like right in the middle of your punch that you make. You'd make it right there, and then that would be where your other punch would go. So I hope that makes sense. I know it's really, really hard to, that's okay, Mom. It's really, really hard to write this down. Somebody asked me to, you know, on Facebook how I did it, and I was trying to figure out how to write it down and make sense, and I didn't make sense to me. So okay, I need to do this in a video because I couldn't make sense of it on paper. So, and how to explain all the different, you know, what I did to do it. So, when you're using just one tab and you're doing just one time, or you're just doing a file folder, it's pretty simple. But when you want to mark out like the tabs so they go down your page and down your book and stuff like that, then you have to be a little bit more precise with where you're putting the next punch. But anyway, so I hope that helps. If you have any questions or anything like that, please let me know. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have, or do another video with it for anything else that you might need. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoy this, and I hope you enjoy your day. Thanks. Bye.